All right, let's dive in. Today we're looking at Chapter 5, Evaluation.
From Scott Howard Swain's book, A Practical EmPath, Rewire Your Mind.
Yeah. This chapter is really at the heart of Swain's PEP system.
That's practical empathy practice.
Right, PEP, and how we use it to, well, basically transform the way we communicate.
It's fascinating, really, because it deals with something we all do.
Probably without realizing it, right?
Exactly. Swain calls it evaluation.
Okay, evaluate.
It's basically presenting our personal opinions.
As if they were universal truths.
Oh, okay. So can you give an example? Like in an everyday conversation, what would that sound like?
Think about those, knee-jerk judgments we make, like, that movie was terrible.
Oh, yeah, I've said that.
Or, he's so lazy. Or even, a seemingly positive one, like, she's the best.
Right. Those all sound like pretty straightforward statements of fact.
They do. But Swain's point is that these statements, they're actually loaded with our own values.
Our preferences.
So instead of just stating facts, we're kind of making judgments.
Yeah, based on your own internal compass.
Yeah.
And that's where things get a little tricky, because what feels lazy to one person
Might be prioritizing relaxation to another.
Right. Yeah. So when we mistake these evaluations for universal truths, we risk
Kind of imposing our values on other people.
exactly, which can lead to
Misunderstandings.
conflict.
Yeah, I'm starting to see the problem here. But I think we've all done this at some point, haven't we? It's almost like we're addicted to judging things.
It is. Swain actually talks about this addiction to evaluation and offers some reasons for why we do it.
Oh, okay. Lay it on me.
Well, one is efficiency.
Efficiency, okay.
It's just easier and faster to just label something as good or bad than to really explain our feelings about it.
Right, like a shortcut.
Exactly, a shortcut. And another reason is conditioning. We're taught from childhood to categorize things.
Good or bad.
Yeah. Toys are good. Vegetables are bad.
Getting A's is good.
Failing is bad. This kind of binary system.
Is ingrained in us.
Yeah, it's ingrained in our culture.
Wow.
And then there's also fear. Swain suggests that sometimes we evaluate others to avoid
Being judged ourselves.
Yeah, it's like a preemptive strike. Judge them before they judge you.
A defense mechanism.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And lastly, Swain points to our desire for control. Evaluations can simplify the world. It offers us a sense of order, even if it's an illusion.
So we're hooked on making evaluations. What's the alternative? How do we break free?
Well, that's where the power of value statements comes in.
Value statements. Okay, tell me more.
Swain presents these as the antidote to evaluations.
Okay.
It's about shifting the focus from judging others to expressing our own feelings and needs.
Fine.
It's about owning our preferences without imposing them on others.
So instead of saying, this meeting is pointless, I might say,
Which is definitely an evaluation.
yes, it is. I might say something like, I'm feeling frustrated because I was hoping this meeting would be more focused on brainstorming solutions.
Perfect example. You've acknowledged your own feelings and needs without labeling the meeting itself. Do you see the difference?
Yeah, it feels, I don't know, it feels more honest somehow. It's less accusatory.
And you've opened up the possibility for a more constructive conversation. Instead of complaining about the meeting, now you can address a specific need. Maybe others share your frustration.
Okay, this makes sense. But shifting from those ingrained patterns, those evaluations to value statements, that can't be easy.
You're absolutely right. It takes practice. But the impact on our communication is profound. Swain highlights several benefits.
Like what?
Increased self-awareness. By articulating our values, we get to know ourselves better. We understand what matters to us, what drives our reactions.
What we truly want.
Exactly.
So it's like shining a light on our own, what did you say, internal compass.
Yeah. And it also fosters authenticity and courage in our communication. By expressing our true feelings and needs, we build trust and respect.
It's like being vulnerable, right?
Yes. And on a larger scale, value statements can promote acceptance and harmony. When we acknowledge that others have different values, we create space for more peaceful interactions.
Instead of me versus you, it's more like we're in this together.
That's a great way to put it. It's recognizing that we all have different values, and that doesn't have to lead to conflict.
Okay, I'm convinced. But I think our listeners are probably eager to hear some more concrete examples.
You're right. Let's get into some practical applications. Like, let's say someone says, he's such a lazy bum.
Ooh, a classic.
A value statement might be, his priorities for rest and leisure seem different than mine.
Ah, so instead of labeling him as lazy, we're acknowledging a difference in priorities.
Exactly. Or instead of saying, that movie was terrible, you might say, I didn't enjoy that film because it didn't resonate with my values of humor and lightheartedness.
So we're not saying the movie is objectively bad.
Right. You're focusing on how it aligned with your own personal values.
With my value.
Swain really emphasizes focusing on how the other person affects us and our values, not on judging them. It's about owning our experiences.
Without assigning blame.
Yes.
It's like turning the spotlight inward.
It is. It's about cultivating personal responsibility for our feelings.
Okay, so it's about shifting from judgment to, what, observation? From evaluation to articulation.
You got it. And Swain gives some great conversation examples in the book.
Oh, I'd love to hear some of those.
All sorts of everyday scenarios.
Yeah.
From difficult colleagues to family disagreements.
Ooh, we'll have to save that for the next part of our deep dive.
We will. We'll give our listeners a moment to digest all this, but trust me, those conversation examples are gold.
I can't wait. All right, so before the break, we were about to get into those practical examples of how to actually use these value statements in conversation.
Yeah, Swain gives some good ones.
I'm ready.
So, imagine this. A frustrated coworker, they throw up their hands and say, "This team meeting is pointless. Everyone's ideas are so stupid."
Oh, yeah, class.
How do we respond to that?
Without getting sucked into the negativity.
Yeah, or dismissing their feelings completely. You could try something like, "Sounds like you're feeling really frustrated with the meeting."
So we're acknowledging their emotion.
Yeah, before evaluating the meeting itself.
Okay, and it's not accusatory at all.
Right. It invites them to elaborate a little bit.
And would that change how the conversation goes from there?
Oh, absolutely. So in Swain's example, the person says, "Yeah, it's just a waste of time."
Okay.
And here's where you can gently nudge them towards understanding their values, You could ask, are these meetings not aligning with your value of productive and meaningful discussions?
Oh, I see. You're not telling them what they should value,
Right.
but helping them see what might be causing that frustration.
Exactly. And the person goes, "Exactly. I wish we could have more focused, more practical conversations."
Oh, wow.
They've gone from complaining to identifying a need.
Yeah, it's from that one question.
And that opens a new door, right? Maybe others feel the same. And now you can actually work towards solutions, instead of just griping.
So powerful. Give me another example.
Okay. How about this? Someone just got some bad news, and they say, "I can't believe I got rejected again. This is so unfair."
Oh, yeah, rejection.
Imagine, instead of trying to fix things or, offering platitudes,
Right.
you say, "It sounds like you're really disappointed because you value fairness and recognition."
Okay, so we're naming the feeling
Yeah.
and linking it to a value that's been, violated.
Right, exactly. And it validates their experience without saying the situation is unfair, which is debatable.
So you're meeting them where they are emotionally, but also helping them reflect.
Yes. And the person says, "Yeah, I put in so much effort, it's just not right."
Okay.
So then you could say, "Would you like more opportunities to, showcase your work and have your contributions valued?"
Oh, I love that.
You're not telling them what to do, but helping them say what they want.
It's actionable.
It is. That's something they can work on. Maybe they need to talk to their boss, about visibility or seek out new opportunities. The point is they've moved from unfairness to having a direction.
I'm seeing how this can transform interactions.
It's not just about avoiding conflict. It's turning it into something positive, growth and understanding.
Exactly. And I bet Swain has more examples.
He does. There's one about, someone frustrated with new policies at work, and another about someone super excited about a project that others aren't into.
So these PEP techniques can really be used all over the place.
Yeah, it's not just for tense situations.
It's a fundamental shift.
It is. Instead of judgment, curiosity.
Instead of what's wrong, it's what matters.
To us and to the other person.
But, rewiring our brains to think this way.
It takes practice. Swain talks about, journaling, self-awareness, practicing empathy.
For ourselves and others.
Exactly. Even experimenting with different communication techniques.
So putting it all into action.
Yes. Making it part of daily life. And speaking of putting things into action, there's this concept Swain talks about that's really relevant today.
Okay, hit me.
Amtssprach.
Amtssprach.
That sounds serious.
It is. It's this German word. It refers to, bureaucratic language that denies choice, personal responsibility.
All right, now I'm intrigued.
Swain gives this chilling example. Adolf Eichmann.
Oh, wow.
Responsible for transporting Jews to concentration camps during the Holocaust.
Right.
When asked if it was difficult, sending so many to their deaths.
Oh, gosh.
Eichmann said, "To tell you the truth, it was easy. Our language made it easy."
That's haunting.
It is. And he went on to explain that He and the other officers, they used this specific type of language.
What, like a code?
Yeah, they called it Amtssprache, or office talk.
Okay.
And this language allowed them to distance themselves from what they were doing,
From the consequences.
from the horror of it all.
So they were using language to, dehumanize the victims and avoid responsibility. Exactly. They could answer any question with, I had to, or it was my duty, or those were my orders.
Wow.
It removed their agency, their ability to even question what they were doing.
That's terrifying. So language can be used not just for individual denial, but for, large-scale evil.
It's a sobering example, and Swain's point isn't to say that we're all like Eichmann,
Right.
but that this kind of language exists on a spectrum.
Oh, okay.
We may not be, orchestrating genocide, but we all learn to speak Amtssprache to some extent.
So what would be some examples of that in everyday life?
Think about phrases we use all the time. It's not my job.
Right.
That's just the way it is. I had no choice.
I've said all of those.
They seem harmless, but they contribute to a culture where we don't question, we don't challenge, we don't take responsibility. Instead of, what can I do? It's not my fault.
Oh, I see. We're training ourselves to be passive.
Exactly. Swain wants us to be aware of when we use Amtssprache, not to beat ourselves up about it, but to start making different choices.
So, if I catch myself saying I had no choice, I can stop and ask, did I really have no choice?
Yes. It's about reclaiming your power, even in small ways.
Because those small choices add up.
Right, they do. They shape our lives and the world.
Mind-blowing. I'm seeing language in a whole new light.
That's what's so great about Swain's work. It's not just about using the right words.
Deeper than that.
It's about how language impacts our thoughts and our behavior and even, society as a whole.
And speaking of impact, I'm curious, what does Swain propose as an alternative to this Amtssprache?
There's this other fascinating concept he explores.
Oh, yeah.
E-prime.
E-prime. Now you've lost me.
It stands for English prime.
Okay.
It's a form of English that gets rid of all forms of the verb to be.
Wait, so no is, am, are?
No, was, were.
How does that even work?
I know, it sounds strange, but it's this really interesting experiment in being precise with language.
Okay, I'm listening.
The idea is that the verb to be can often lead to, fuzzy thinking, false assumptions.
Okay, I'm not sure I follow.
Think about statements like, the movie was terrible, or she is selfish.
Mm-hmm. Pretty standard.
But they present opinions as facts.
Oh.
E-prime makes you rephrase them.
To what?
Like, I thought the movie was terrible, or her action seems selfish to me.
Ah, so you're owning your own experience.
Exactly. E-prime encourages us to be more precise, to acknowledge the limitations of our own perceptions.
So it's a way of challenging those Amtssprache habits.
It is. It's about being more conscious and responsible.
Wow, so by speaking in E-prime, we're rewiring our brains.
That's the goal. It's not about never using to be again, but about becoming more aware of how language shapes our reality, and trying new ways of expressing ourselves.
I'm going to have to try speaking in E-prime.
I encourage you to. It's really eye-opening.
Okay. Yeah, and it all comes back to empathy. Swain's basically saying that if we change how we talk,
we can change how we relate to the world.
Exactly. And in the last part of the chapter, he actually lays out this vision for a more peaceful world.
Yeah, it's not some, unrealistic utopia. He actually talks about how these PEP principles can make a real difference.
Okay, after all that stuff about Amtssprache and how language can be used for, bad things,
right?
I definitely need some optimism. So what does Swain think is possible?
Well, he starts by saying, obviously we live in a world with a lot of conflict, division, inequality, all of that. But he says that underneath it all, most people want the same things.
Like what?
Connection. Belonging, peace.
Yeah, who wants to live in a world where everyone's fighting all the time?
Right. And Swain believes that PEP can help us tap into that.
That shared desire.
Yeah, those things we all want. It gives us the tools to, bridge those gaps, resolve conflict, and build relationships based on understanding.
So instead of us versus them,
which is so common,
it's more like, hey, we might see things differently, but let's figure this out together.
Exactly. And imagine if we taught this to kids from a young age.
Oh, wow.
Swain talks about integrating PEP into schools, workplaces, even community organizations.
So they learn to express their needs and really listen to others.
Without all those judgments.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
He sees a world where people feel heard, where differences are respected and conflict is seen as an opportunity for growth.
Not just a battle to be won.
Right. It's a beautiful vision, but is it achievable?
Yeah, I mean, that's not wondering. The world feels so messed up right now.
It won't be easy, Swain acknowledges that. But he says every big change starts small.
So we don't have to change everything overnight.
No. We can start by practicing PEP in our own lives, our families, our work, Every time we choose empathy over judgment, every time we use a value statement instead of, a harsh evaluation, we're making a difference.
We're part of that change.
You are. Like Swain says, the revolution begins within.
I love that.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, what's one thing our listeners can do to start putting all this into practice?
I'd say, for the next week, just pay really close attention to how you talk.
Okay.
Notice when you judge, when you use EmPath to, avoid responsibility, when you make assumptions about others based on your own values.
So when I catch myself doing those things...
Don't get down on yourself. Just pause and try to reframe your thoughts using PEP.
Like instead of that person's so lazy.
It becomes their approach to work is different than mine and it's frustrating me.
Yeah.
It takes practice, but it becomes more natural over time.
And maybe we'll inspire others too. Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into Chapter 5 of A Practical EmPath. This has been one of our most, thought-provoking conversations.
It has. It's such a great book full of wisdom and practical advice.
So if you're listening and you want to learn more about communicating better and building stronger relationships, I highly recommend checking it out.
And be sure to visit Swain's website for more info on PEP.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep practicing empathy and stay curious.
And remember, language is powerful. Let's use it to build the kind of world we want to live in.